Welcome everybody to this edition of AACRAO's Credential Chats. Really excited to be joined by just one of my favorite leaders in this space, Darin Hobbs. He is in charge of Learning and Employment Records and Digital Credentials Ecosystem Development at Western Governors University. Darin, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. I'm honored to be here.
And for folks who do not know, Darin, LER, Learning and Employment Records, and you and your team at Western Governors University have been, just at the forefront with the WGU Achievement Wallet, which is, a type of LER, Learning and Employment Record. And when you're describing, just what the Achievement Wallet is or what LERs are, like, how do you help people, overcome the credential confusion that most of us have and just understand just what is this stuff?
There's a lot of new words, new vocabulary entered into this space. And I think, like with most words, context is what matters. Like
Mm.
some people think of a record produced by a college, a university, a school as the LER. It is, in one lens, a kind of LER. But I think of the learning and employment record writ large as a disaggregated cloud of achievements that an individual achieves throughout life. K through 12, employment, college, university, military, volunteerism. All of those moments, all of those achievements live, not always, but often in different databases, different types of systems of record. The learning and employment record is a concentration, a lensing, collapsing of all of those from their disparate locations into a single view for the individual so that they get a full view of their talent over time. And so that they can then understand their talent in the context of additional learning, of employment, of opportunity. That's how I think of an LER. And what makes up the LER, in order for it to work, you hear us talk a lot about digital credentials. That's a convenient term to represent how we take these achievements in our various systems and represent them in structured data that we can think of as a digital credential. But it's basically structuring that data using a standard, an open standard, so that that information can flow into the different systems necessary to bring about action, to bring about some result.
And for anybody who's watching this and thinking, man, he is really speaking registrar speak here. Derek does have a decade of experience as a university registrar. And so, when you're talking about, I love how you put these, that when we say digital badge, digital credential, the important thing, what I hear you saying is less about, the size of what we're credentialing and less about what we're credentialing, but more just that we're doing it in a way that there's structure to it and we can make meaning of it, that it's not just a digital version of my memory box in the garage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when we think about like the transcript, for example, it was higher ed that took the activities of students within academia and structured it into a recognizable form that we registrars could exchange in order to take some kind of action, whether that was recommending an admissions decision or ensuring that transfer credit could be applied appropriately, or that we could understand and calculate 150% rule and grade level. We structured our individualized data around the student into a form that we could then exchange. The challenge with the transcript is that it was written for registrars, written by registrars for registrars. And though it is meaningful to we registrars, it doesn't have a lot of meaning beyond us. And yet our students have made measurable progress, measurable achievements as they spend time with us, whether they graduate or not. And we don't have a way, a clear, convincing, actionable way to represent that. That's where digital credentials or structured data comes into play.
And and for anybody who hasn't watched, one of the video webinars that you and your colleagues at WGU have done with the Achievement Wallet, that they're maybe you're going to be listening to this answer from a disadvantaged place, and so definitely keep that in mind, Darin, for him. But when I watch you share what you're doing, that action word resonates with me. And that's one of the things that I think is really cool for those of us who are very obsessed with student records and that that they are accurate, that they are trusted, that they are verifiable, that they are valid, is that we are moving toward in your case in production environments with learning records that are going to be actionable by whole new audiences, with greater frequency and greater impact than I think we're used to. And so, do you mind just sort of expanding on that idea and just when you picture who's taking action with this actionable information about these learning records, like what are some examples of who's doing that and how?
So let's go back to why the LER, and that all comes from the white paper published by the American Workforce Policy Advisory Board. That was a very, at its core, simple notion. Give individuals a place to collect their achievements using open standards, make them verifiable and trustable, give employers a way to match talent to their needs, give individuals a way to match their talent to what employers need. That was the concept of the LER. And I think oftentimes those of us with a records background, we may not necessarily see the connection between what we do to like employers. And yet, employers are sending a signal to those of us in academia loud and clear. Your macro credential, your degree, that has served to inform us how an individual may be qualified for a job for a number of years is no longer a good proxy. Our workforce is too dynamic. Our job needs are too dynamic. Hell, education is dynamic. And how can we better communicate the outcomes of learning in a way that an employer understands, that the student understands, and that other institutions understand? And so the audience expands beyond just the registrar, because once you structure your data into an open data standard and leverage or associate learning outcomes, whether that's course level, module within the course, uh, micro credentials, which could represent stacked courses. When you associate those outcomes with a KSA, knowledge, skill, and ability, what did the student learn? What did they demonstrate? Whether it was through writing a paper, whether it was through a lab, whether it was through course participation and dialogue. Can we capture that? Can we represent that? And then now your audience becomes your own institution leadership because they can better understand how our curricular offerings add value to our students, how we add value to our communities, how we add value to the industries that we serve in our region. And we can speak about it in ways that we never necessarily could before, beyond anecdotal or just basic storytelling. And then, yes, citing some evidence and some data. But now you've got an entire rich lake of data. But then employers can now clearly see transparently how your students, my students, align to their job needs. That means I can make smarter hiring decisions, faster hiring decisions. And if I actually marry talent to a job need where someone has not just the skills, but the proclivity to perform well, that may speak to more retention
Mm,
of an employee. If I'm a student that is traversing my academic journey with my school, and I encounter that course where, let's all say it together, why do I have to take this? When am I ever going to use it again? But now, if I can understand how the learning outcomes prepare me for life, for jobs, for future courses, for an advanced degree, now I have more context for understanding the value of doing what I'm doing. So this notion of taking what we capture about our students, structuring it digitally, using open data standards, we create a multifaceted system of lenses to view that data individually or in aggregate to make smarter decisions, gain understanding, and maybe even choose to go different directions. I love this possibility, and it's not just possibility. We're seeing it at WGU, so are our learners.
mm. And yeah, I don't think that we can, highlight, underline, put in bold enough that storytelling aspect that you mentioned, that the friction is not so much with degrees, so much as degrees being insufficient as a proxy for what people know and are able to do. And that granularity that you talk about is storytelling that helps communicate it. And when you talk about, not just for employers, but for the learners themselves, that you picture learners themselves using these LERs to understand not just its end of the road summatively, but also formatively. And so I think with the remaining time we have, I just want to ask you from that formative point of view, you talked about later on when, when they graduate, that these things can help with retention for the employers. Does that also translate to student success and student retention and student success and advising, kind of implications while they're still with us on campus?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, now that we've launched the Achievement Wallet to all of our students and our alumni, we're going to be doing measures and observing how those who have claimed the wallet and are using the wallet versus those who have not yet adopted. We're going to study and do a compare contrast and some correlational studies around retention, progress, satisfaction. The theory being that I now understand, therefore I see value in continuation. Therefore, I can clearly see the outcomes at the end of this road. I want those outcomes. And then I'm ready and better prepared for the next step. So, absolutely, it is a win all the way around. And our students are telling us this. They're telling us this through survey feedback. One individual, this is anecdotal, comes to mind that says, I'm already using my wallet every time I have a one-on-one with my supervisor, where we discuss my progress in academia, how that's reflected in my job performance, and how I'm gaining the skills that I need that will further my career with my employer. That's powerful.
And I'm picturing, that I oftentimes describe these things as highlight reels, but you're talking about learners use them as not just a highlight reel, but a mirror to better understand who they are as learners and achievers.
Brilliant. I sometimes will describe the LER and our achievement wallet as being both a mirror and a telescope. It reflects back to me where I've been so that I can reflect upon that journey and understand it because now I can gain that insight and understanding. But I can also peer forward across and into vistas and horizons that I hadn't even imagined because I can see the connection between where I've been, where I am, and where I can possibly go.
And I cannot imagine a better place to end than that. Darin Hobbs, Thank you so much for joining AACRAO's Credential Chats and sharing your wisdom with us. And again, if anybody has not seen one of their webinars, please just go on YouTube and type in Darin's name along with WGU Achievement Wall, and you can see many webinars they've done sharing what they already have in production environments because it's pretty special. Darin, thank you so much for sharing with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And thank you all for taking the time to join us and have a badge-worthy week, everybody. So long.